All right, we're going to call to order the July 5th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting. We'll begin by standing and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to deviate just for a second. Words cannot express the tremendous grief and sorrow that this city is experiencing over the loss of Officer Matthew Mazzani. Our safety forces and the citizens and the family have to really be suffering in his loss. And in reflection of this tragedy and in memoriam for Officer Mazzani's family, I'd like to have a moment of silence as we bow our heads and remember this. Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Varga.
Here.
Mr. Cicero.
Here.
Mr. Cook.
Here.
Mr. Perkovic.
Mr. Perkovich is excused.
Mr. Sidoti.
Here.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Here.
And Mr. Snow.
Mr. Snow is excused. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes for the June 14th Planning Commission meeting.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Madam Clerk?
Mr. Varga.
Yes.
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
Okay. On tonight's agenda, we have one public hearing. How we handle our public hearings is I'll ask the applicant to come up to the podium, state their name, and give us an overview of the project. And then I'll ask if there are any proponents in the audience, those who are in favor of the applicant's project. And allow them to come up, state your name, first and last name, your address, and you can advocate in support of the project. And I'll ask if there are any opponents, those who oppose the project. Again, you come up to the podium, state your first and last names, your address, and give us your argument or arguments as to why you don't want to see the project move forward. And then if any proponents or opponents want to ask questions of the applicant, I'll allow that, but those questions have to flow through the chair. Tonight's public hearing is a conditional use permit to allow vehicle leasing at 7430 Menor Avenue in the B2 General Business District by the Hertz Corporation and Cipriani Property Company Limited. Is that applicant here? Please come to the podium and identify yourself for the clerk.
My name is Simon Kaplan of Cresco Real Estate, and I'm here representing Hertz and Michael Cipriani.
Okay, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Hertz is presently located on 615, and they would like to move to allow another project to go on, and they're looking at property at 7430 Menor Avenue. This is a site plan of the property. The building used to house a bicycle company, was in there. Building's about 2,200 square feet. There's customer parking in the front of the building. I'll use a pointer. Customer parking in the front of the building. Employee parking would be on the side over here. In the back of the building would be only for rental cars, period. That would be the only use in the back of the building. The property line of this goes through the adjacent building, and there is talk that the city would like these parcels split or consolidated, and Mr. Cipriani will work with the city to take care of that issue. As far as Hertz goes, they're not going to service any vehicles here. This will purely be offices for them at this point. They're only going to do painting on the inside of the building, clean up the outside of the building, the outside of the property. They will be coming to the city for sign approvals, because they are going to put up signage, and they know they need approval for that. And they're looking to make this move as soon as possible and as simple as possible.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who's in favor of this project and would like to step forward and advocate on behalf of Hertz? I want to give to the clerk, we have a correspondence from the property owner, Mr. Dominic Cipriani, and I'm not going to read it, but Ms. Mitchell, Mr. Cipriani is speaking in favor of this property being converted for the use by Hertz, and we'll give it to the clerk to reflect in our record.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, he concurred with the conditions that were outlined in the staff report, that he would be able to meet those directly involving himself as the property owner, and also would stipulate in the lease contract no servicing of vehicles.
And what about the consolidation of the property into one parcel?
Yes, he was in agreement that that's probably something that should happen. It's been like that for some time, but he would work with us to make sure that that was done.
Okay, good. Are there any opponents to this project? Anyone who would like to come to the podium and speak against this project moving forward? All right, with that said, I want to acknowledge that we did receive a phone call followed up by an email from the property owners to the rear of the property. I believe their name was Mrs., let me see, I got it here, Mr. and Mrs. Brett Buckley. They reside at 7453 Broadmoor Circle. She's lived there for 28 years. She started out with her opposition by saying she's very disenchanted with how the AutoZone project turned out. She felt that they were never sought for opinions, or she wasn't involved in any conversation or decision-making. She says she has a problem with AutoZone, their trash and garbage ending up now on her property, allegedly. That the buffer area is not quite compliant. There's some trees back there dying, some heavy brush was removed, and it's not serving as much of a buffer as they would like. On that point there, before we get back to the subject, Ms. Mitchell, I would like somebody on your staff to go back and re-examine what we approved for AutoZone as far as the buffer requirement. Then if we can have someone from the staff go out there and check it, and let's make sure that they are in compliance with what we stated they had to do. Because if you pull into the property, which I have, on the western end, you can go as far as the board-on-board fence, which abuts the western end of their building. So you can't go behind their building, and you can't really see what's behind it. But everything to the north of that fence, including their trash enclosure, is very clean. So I really would like to know what's going on behind the property. Then as far as and if you can report back to us on your director's report at the
Yes.
next meeting. The proposed Hertz property, that's also on a very, small parcel. And in reviewing that parcel, the Mrs. Buckley's concerned that if there's any construction, how will that affect their property? By here, there will be no construction. In driving behind that property, it's very heavily wooded. There's some very mature trees back there, a lot of green, and it really serves as a perfect buffer now. So I imagine we're not going to ask Hertz to do anything to that area, just leave it the way it is. Is that correct, Ms. Mitchell?
Well, it was one of the items that Mr. Cipriani commented on in that late correspondence I received today, basically concurring with what you indicated, that is a substantial natural wooded buffer, and with some very mature trees that are in good shape. He said he's happy to work with us if we feel that there are areas that need to be cleaned up.
Right.
And honestly, that's something we can, again, more closely examine when we go out and look at the other side as
Good.
well. But he felt that also served as a very good buffer
I
currently.
agree with him. Okay. So let the record note that Mr. and Mrs. Buckley, their objections have been noted, and we're going to follow up and hopefully have some additional information the next time we get together. All right, with that said, I'm going to close the public hearing. Ms. Mitchell, are there any further comments that your staff or anybody wants to make on this?
Nothing at this time.
All right. I'm going to open this up now to questions from the commissioners to the applicant. One question I have, I drove onto your property on 6/15, Monday evening, about 7:45, and obviously it was closed. There were no customers, there were no employees, but I counted 42 leased vehicles on your site, starting from the west going forward to the east on both sides. With that number of leased vehicles or potential leased vehicles, how are you going to transition over to the site on Menor Avenue when you can probably put maybe 15 leased vehicles on that site?
You're correct. 15 is probably about it. They are going to store vehicles off-site at a different location around Cuyahoga County and also around Lake County. This is just going to be basically a pickup and delivery spot and an office where people can make their arrangements. That's purely what this facility will be. It's not going to be car storage, but there is enough parking for basically not even a day's worth of business.
Right.
They know that they have to move them in and out.
And what happens if the car's kind of backlogged, they can start stacking up a little bit? How would you handle that? I mean, if you can't move them out of there quickly, are you going to have to double park them, or, I mean?
That's a great question.
Because that could
Obvious
happen.
answer is yes, they will have to. I mean, I could say anything, but you brought up a great point, and yes, potential that could happen. I mean, it is limited as to how much you can get in and out of the spot, and they are only leasing the section with the building, not the whole property, but from the property line, this property line literally to the other building. So they
Right.
don't have other parking that's there.
And that's your access to the rear of your building is that eastern aisle, drive aisle.
Correct, yes.
Now, I went back there, and it's very small back there. I mean, it's tight.
It's very narrow.
And
yes, it
I
is.
could see, maybe a car or two, or is there a man door on the back of that property?
No, it's one that's on the side.
Okay. I mean, it was stated in the report, it doesn't meet parking aisle or space standards, but that is a very tight area back there for 7 cars. It's just an observation
It
of
would
mine.
be used just for their own, and no people from the public would really be allowed to go back there. It would be a Hertz employees, period.
If you were to get approval on this, are you going to pave that parking lot in front?
Not sure what Mr. Cipriani's,
It can't stand some improvement.
it does need to, the whole property needs to be cleaned up and taken care of, and they all know that, and they will take care of it, but I can't tell you that he plans on actually repaving.
I'm sorry, commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Vargo?
how many, I don't know if you have this information, you probably should know what it is. What's your turnover on a daily basis? How many cars are leased, how many cars are dropped off?
I don't know the answer to that, but I can get that.
I mean, I understand the idea of having a satellite someplace, but you're suggesting there's a satellite parking lot someplace in the county. I just have a bad feeling about this, that you're gonna end up with cars all over the place. People dropping off, people picking up. The comment about 42 cars in your current lot, and you can only, with customers and with staff, you only have 7 spots for rental cars. I mean, granted, overnight, you don't have staff, and so you have more, but I don't know how you're gonna operate this business.
What their plan is that's what, to have multiple locations feeding this location.
I mean, I hear you, I understand that, but there's a time lag between when you can get a car from someplace else in the county and to get somebody to take that car and put it in that lot or bring another one back and forth. I mean,
One thing I do know is that 90 to 95% of their business is all prearranged, where it's either reserved via phone calls or via the internet. And very rare does somebody come in and say, I need a car now.
I understand, but, I mean,
So
just
they can
using
prepare
the,
for that.
just using the example of the observation that the current business has 42 parked cars overnight, and you're reducing that to between 7 and 15, I mean, it is, in my mind, I know you folks may have thought about this more, but to me, it doesn't sound like this is enough space for you to do this. It just doesn't seem viable. Now, that's just my opinion. And like, if I knew how many turnovers you had every day, how many people dropped off cars, how many people picked up cars on an average, or even on a holiday. I mean, I'm not concerned so much on a slow day, but on a holiday or something like that, where you have a higher volume, I'm just afraid you're gonna have cars all over the place.
We can get you a plan that would show the volume in and out on a regular, daily basis. I mean, I can get that for you.
Right.
I'm not prepared to do that right now, but we could
And I,
table this and put it off to the next meeting and get
That
that
could
for
happen.
you.
sure. I just want to point out too, that drive lane next to the building, that's got to be a fire lane. It services both buildings. So I don't think you can even temporarily park anybody there without violating the fire lane. So, is staff, would that observation be true?
I know the fire department did review the plans, didn't make a specific comment to that. I will add that part of the desire of the lot consolidation, aside from getting the center building in zoning compliance, because the property line is going right through it, would be to then calculate parking as a whole for all three buildings, which would then give you a more fair viewpoint of what's available for the whole site.
But the building in the middle is almost 2 times the size of the building we're talking about, and it only has a handful of spaces in front. So I don't see adding that is going to help you at all, in terms of the number of spaces, because there's very little parking. If you separated that center building in its own plot, you'd have even less parking.
Well, one's a paint store and the other one, I believe, is an office. Am I correct?
Car title loans
Yeah.
on
The title loan place.
cars.
Okay, well, I don't want to speak about something that's not done yet, but I don't know that that's going to, by separating the lots, I don't think that's going to help you from a count point of view. And then there's also property on the other side that has to be considered when you start
You mean consolidating though.
consolidating it.
Yeah,
or
we had
you
not
know.
planned on shared parking. I mean, the
Right,
Hertz people were basically limited to the site that they're leasing.
Right,
The title loan people have their site.
right.
The title loan, that's a separate entity that leased the
Correct.
property from Mr. Cipriani.
Correct. They're in the middle building, the property line goes.
Mr. Chairman, I suggest we table this until the next meeting, until we get more information about the activity, the level of activity, the number of cars, number of turnovers, to see if this is a viable property for them.
The rest of the commission members, you agree with that?
I agree with that. One other thing, if you can come back with, is when you talk about the turnover, does this operate as a retail lot also? So if I'm getting a car and someone's driving me there to drop off, to pick up the car, there needs to be parking for that individual also. So as they look at the turnover, not just the cars in and out, the retail aspect, how many people come into the store and are dropped off, that's another parking spot needed.
In your instance, that would be considered one of the customer parking spots. Knowing that really 99% of the people have to get a ride somewhere, somehow to this facility.
So when you do this in and out, include that,
Right.
all the spots, okay?
All right, commission members, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to table this until we get more information.
Have a second. Was there a second? Okay, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Varga. Yes. Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook. Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time, appreciate it.
All right, under old business, miscellaneous review of curbside express grocery pickup at 8383 Tyler Boulevard in the B2 General Business District by Giant Eagle Incorporated and VOH Menor LLC and Visconsi Companies Limited. Is that applicant here? Please come to the podium. Please state your name for the clerk.
My name is Nick Deutsche. I'm an architect with DLA Plus Architecture Interior Design, located at 750 Holiday Drive in Green Tree, Pennsylvania.
All right, thank you. All right, were you here last time when we discussed this?
Yes, sir, I
You were,
was.
okay. So we want to talk about the how you handled the wall, the western wall, where we wanted a little bit more architectural articulation on that wall. Talk about the drop-off, the color scheme for your accent, the moving of the entrance, and the additional windows, and end it with the propane tanks, how you plan to address that. Okay, go ahead, the floor is yours.
The highlights of the meeting of June 14th were that our clients were challenged to take a second look at the main facade of the building, which, as submitted, differed from the original conceptual design that was presented about a year ago. In that original design, there were two large windows. In the design that was subsequently submitted and reviewed during the last meeting, the two large windows were actually lowered, so they appeared a lot shorter than originally shown. Also, the main entrance of the store moved to the right, so there was quite a bit of a unarticulated masonry wall between the second window and the main entrance of the store. So the commissioner challenged us to take a look and see what we can do with the main facade to make it more friendly architecturally. We studied several options for constructability and economy, and also aesthetic value. Our clients and us, we selected two options that we submitted to the planners. We worked with Mr. Rastetter, and we selected an option that actually depicts 3 windows rather than 2. And we thought that that would be the appropriate option. We think that it balances and eliminates the unarticulated portion of the facade. It also is a practically very viable option. It simply repeats a detail that's already been created. There are no structural complications with this one. And lastly, I believe it was mentioned during the meeting, wouldn't it be nice if we have more daylight inside? So this third window actually increases the daylight inside the store. So we feel that this exercise helped making the building better. As far as the propane tanks were concerned, we decided not to implement those at this point. If our client decides to implement that function, they will make a separate submission, and they do understand the requirements for screening and remoteness from a door.
Okay.
So at this point, it's not on the table,
All right.
and we removed it from the elevation.
And what about the main entrance? You said that was moved east,
it-
and there's another window added?
Correct.
As
So
depict-
that's what these
as depicted
elevations
under-
represent, yes. We were also asked to submit all 4 elevations of the building in color, and we did that.
Okay. Commission members, any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Vargo?
I appreciate the effort that you put into this, and I think it is an improvement. And so whatever concerns I have, I think you moved the ball down the field, and it looks like a more interesting building.
Thank you, sir.
I do have one series of questions, or one question, and I'm not sure how it, well, you'll give me the answer, I guess. I noticed that the parapets on the side of the building step down, and the back of the building is literally flush with the roof edge. It's a gutter line, right? If I read this correctly. Where are the mechanical units?
Gee, we're not, they're on the roof.
They're on the roof. Okay, well, there is a requirement to shield those from view.
Correct.
So I guess that's my concern, is that when we're approving an elevation, and I'm going to make a statement back after this to the city, just about this, is that I don't know how big these units are, I don't know where they are, and I don't know what you have to do to shield them from view. Would it be your intention to use the parapet walls to shield your
Correct.
view of these? So, I mean, some of these parapets go down to nothing at the north
It's,
end of the building.
I believe the mechanical design calls for the unit to be back where we have taller parapets.
Okay, but can you, as an example, we've talked about this other projects, and it's kind of a, we wouldn't, when you get out to Center Street, which is immediately to your east, we don't want to see the rooftop units from Center Street. So even though you have this large mass to the north, and I appreciate it that if it's behind that, you don't see it from the north, but any sizable unit on the roof is going to be seen from the east.
Right.
We don't want to see it from the east. So, I guess, so I'm asking, how would you approach that? Because your parapet is relatively conservative as it steps down.
What we can do is we can submit a study showing a view that would demonstrate how visible the mechanical units are and what steps we can take to shield them.
If I'm, Mr. Varga, if I'm not mistaken, when they constructed the Lake Health Wellness Center, we asked them to come back with a study showing us the views from the east, west, north, south, et cetera. Is that what you're looking for?
I guess it's my need to see these units in an elevation to see how it affects the elevation. If there's going to be new components, new walls, new pieces of the building that's going to shield these units, I'd like to see the final elevation from a design point of view, just so that we know what we're looking at.
Would the perspective views from certain locations suffice as a submission?
I think so, yes. I think something, directly east, say at the entrance from Center Street, right, when you pull in. I mean, I want to kind of get a consensus here. I don't want to.
Definitely east.
Sure. Tyler?
Something from the east, something from Tyler at the other end. I think, I don't know if we can
I think
enforce.
coming off the highway too might be helpful.
Well,
It'll be hard because the elevation's
Yeah,
higher.
Route 2 is
yeah,
higher.
and let me ask, would that be considered an elevation we'd be concerned about from, from the freeway?
Well, from the freeway,
It's already high.
It's already a
You're
raised
gonna look down on the
elevation.
roof. I don't know that that's the critical view, but I think from the east.
From
and
Tyler?
And from Tyler, at the south. And just, and we try to get these views from off-site where you see the building as you're driving by. So, and I guess, I just get back to the city, if we can make this part of a requirement of the presentation, that they, because this is about the third time in the recent past that we've gotten nice colored elevations, but they just don't show the mechanical units, and we don't really know if they're meeting the requirement or not. So I think showing the mechanical units has to be part of the requirements for presentation. Because otherwise, we're still in play here with this guy, and they want to go ahead, right? They want to build.
Mr. Chairman, would you consider making this a condition that they screen them and then we include it as part of a director's report at the next meeting? They indicate, because we obviously can't approve the building permit until it meets all the conditions.
Right.
I'm just in terms of, for the benefit of the applicant, keeping this moving forward.
And I'm not trying to make a big deal out of it, but the reality is, I'm assuming these are pretty good-sized units. It's a big building. And that you have a parapet wall that steps down to a foot, to nothing in the back. So it would almost mean that the entire unit is going to be exposed to some degree when you're off-site. So I don't know how you move forward to shield these multiple units when you don't really have much of a wall to use it on, to do that with. Can you give me an idea how this is going to be approached?
Like I said, we'll go back, we'll show the units on top of the building, we'll show you views from the east and
From
from
the east and
Tyler.
from the south.
Yeah. And
What is, I'm just afraid that this is gonna change the elevations of the building. Don't you think that would change the elevations?
Good.
I mean, it could, like, again, we will make the necessary submission, and it's not the intent for us or our client to skirt the issue or not.
Right, and I'm not trying to make this more complicated than it is, but we keep seeing these elevations without the units, and that's part of the review process. What do you want to do?
Well, Ms. Mitchell, I like your suggestion. We can put a third condition in there that requires them to show the administration, come back to you with their design and how those units will be shielded, especially from Center Street and from Tyler. And if the administration is comfortable with that and feels that it does meet our code, then the process can continue for the application of the building permit. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, the only thing I would note is that the two conditions that are stated actually pertain to the propane tanks, so those actually can be removed.
Oh, that's correct.
But otherwise, yeah.
So one condition. All right,
Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
yes.
Down here.
I'm sorry.
Well, I guess what I propose is the condition be fairly explicit that any approval is not final with respect to the screening of rooftop mechanical units. And I'm going slow, so Ms. Frost can take this down. And the commission reserves jurisdiction to subsequently review elevations depicting the mechanical units and any proposed screening of those units for further action.
Okay,
That sounds acceptable. That sounds good.
got that?
I got that.
Okay. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
To approve with one condition.
We'll eliminate the two current conditions.
Correct.
And we'll put in the condition that Mr. Zeman has just so adequately
Articulate.
articulated.
Second.
Second? All right. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Varga.
Yes.
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we will just submit the elevations.
To the Ms. Mitchell's staff, and she'll report back to us at the next commission meeting.
Chairman?
Yes.
The applicant may be advised that, they may want to appear at that meeting, just in case there's
Questions?
questions, and obviously, the administration can give some guidance, but ultimately, it's your decision relative to how you may vote. So,
You heard our counsel. Please plan to attend our next meeting, and if we have any questions based on the presentation made to us by Ms. Mitchell, at least you'll be here to answer any questions, and we can keep this moving as opposed to you not being here and we got to wait to the August meeting.
What's the date?
Larry?
26th of July.
Very much.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, under new business, miscellaneous review of fencing at 8215 Menor Avenue in the R2 Single Family Residential District by the Mentor Public Library. Is that applicant here? Welcome. State your names, first and last for the clerk, and then give us your presentation.
I am Cheryl Cronin, Executive Director of the Mentor Public Library. It's very
Craig
small, but
Mossberger, Facilities Manager for Mentor Public Library.
Okay. Yeah, these pictures are pretty awful, seeing all the dead arborvitaes, you know.
6 dead arborvitae.
Yeah, 4 living?
4 lived, and they are the ones that are by where the sidewalk bends. So it's because they didn't have the salt exposure.
My first concern, and I did read it, the neighbor is okay with this, and she feels that even it would look better. And so what she's seeking is privacy.
Yes, yeah, she was actually delighted when I approached her and asked her how she felt about it.
Well, go ahead, give us a brief overview, like what you went through.
Oh, so, well, as you know, in 2015, we came to you with the drive-through, and it was stipulated to put what I've been calling a living fence.
Right.
And so we did install it, we watered it, we had a drip hose. We did install the salt fence, there are 2 layers, both seasons. But this winter was longer and colder, and we have to keep that sidewalk clear. That is the staff access sidewalk, plus it's also the public ADA sidewalk from the bus stop. So, it is essential that that is not icy, and we have to salt it regularly. So when we removed the burlap and the salt plastic, we discovered 46 dead arborvitae. And in talking with the landscaper, he has determined that there's really no guarantee that that won't happen again if we replant. And then in talking with the neighbor, she again has the wish for privacy and was delighted with the idea of having a vinyl fence. Like her neighbor, her friend who's down the street has one.
And it was the landscaper's opinion that the substance used to control your ice was much more abrasive and much more harsher than what's normally used, like ice melt, and that affected the trees?
So what I learned is that salt is actually only effective to about 20 degrees, and when it's colder, you have to use a different substance. Everyone does, city does, and that substance is much more abrasive to plants. And so, anytime there's a cold winter, there is the risk, basically, of them dying again.
Right. And you're
And we
just,
did do a little research to see if there are other plants that are salt tolerant, and really there isn't a whole lot of option. Those are so close to the sidewalk.
okay,
Also,
good.
that is our that's our exit too. So we have the drive-through on that side. We have traffic constantly going through there to spray from the parking lot.
Right,
residue.
right, so it's pretty
It's
tough.
airborne, gets onto those trees, and it's really hard to control.
Right, right. Any comments from the administration?
Not at this time.
Commission members, any questions for the applicant? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. Anyone?
Motion to approve with 2 conditions.
Okay. The first condition, note that the first sentence has been stricken. Have a second.
Second?
Okay, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Varga.
Yes?
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Have a lovely evening.
Item number 4, final site plan and architectural review of a commercial building at 6866 Center Street in the B2 General Business District by Thomas 5 Limited and VOH Menor LLC and Visconti Companies Limited. There we go.
Again,
Please state your name for the clerk when you're ready to start.
Rich Cantanzariti with Land Design Consultants. We're the engineers and surveyors on the project. Larry. Hold out. That's all.
It's like a high school science project.
Nope. There's one of them. I won't be able to see that, but. Well, tonight, we're, Land Design is representing Interstate Construction, who is representing Thomas 5 Limited. Tonight, we're looking for final site plan and architectural approval. As stated in the staff report, we have already incorporated several recommendations made by the staff, some of which we reduced the in and out drive apron to 20 feet, added the landscape islands on each side to protect the 4 spaces in the middle here on the in and out. We incorporated a L-shaped safety rail and extended the sidewalk there so that protects any pedestrians from the traffic outside. We added the bike rack and the connecting sidewalk to the Center Street sidewalk with the crosswalks to the entrance. And also, we removed 2 parking spaces to allow easier movement in and out of the end spaces, and again, we enhanced that with additional landscaping. A few new items that were done per the staff's recommendation. We added the do not enter sign at the exit drive. And, we corrected the spacing of the bollards around the patio to 54 inches minimum, per the requirements of the city. Additional conditions for approval, the engineering comments on the utility plan, we did show the gas service line. It was not available to me when I did the plans originally. I already mentioned the do not enter sign. That was another engineering comment. The landscape plan, photometric plan, and electrical service plan will all be submitted as part of the building permit application when that time comes. The approved building material by the client is as you see it here tonight, and I think one of those boards was brought here to the last meeting. And one thing they wanted to note on the elevation drawing. Can you zoom out? We kind of highlighted where the mechanical units are and the elevation of them to show that they're all screened from all directions. And that, what?
Good.
Oh, okay. Oh, I heard that somewhere before, I don't know. I guess with that, I'll entertain questions from the commission.
As far as the comment made by the administration, has the bike rack been moved a little closer
Oh,
to
yeah.
the main entrance?
Well,
Or is that still an
we
issue?
talked about that today, and we have, well, really, I think we only have one option, but another one was brought to me. It's kind of hard to, even though the sidewalk's 6.67 feet wide here, I don't see how you can put anything over there against the building. It's just, it would be, it'll be cluttered. But it's possible. The other area that I'm looking at is right here, north of the patio. It's currently a landscaped area. It's, it's available for that type of thing, and that's about as close we can get based on the current site plan. So we didn't move it yet.
Kathy, Larry, your feelings on this?
You want to comment on that? Go ahead.
The administration's concerned with the bike rack being out by the street. We've had it in the past where we've had them move them internal so that provides a little bit more safety and protection for the bikes. Out by a main thoroughfare, you never know what could happen there. Another site we had them moved inwards were at the Outback site at the mall. They had it over by Plaza Boulevard, a little bit far away from the storefront. If you're riding your bike there, you kind of want to be able to sit down, eat your food, and still be able to keep an eye on your bike in most cases. So that's why we suggested it get slid in, if possible.
Okay. Are you going to attempt to see if this can work?
Yes.
And if there are any
Yeah.
new problems that should arise because of it?
Sure. I mean, the drawing's a little cluttered, but that's a good area right there. So I'll get the exact size of the bike rack pad that they want to place there and see if it'll fit right there.
And work directly with our planners and Ms. Mitchell's staff on rectifying that, if possible, if it can be done safely and within the plan.
I will do that. Thank
And
you.
what about changing out the river stone and going with all mulch?
My client is, they're going to do whatever they need to do. And since it's not allowed, I guess.
What was your thinking of the river stone because of the flammability, the mulch, if someone should throw cigarettes out or something like that?
They were really looking for just simplicity of landscaping.
But you're willing to put the mulch?
Absolutely. yeah.
Commission member, any questions? Mr. Cook?
I see on this rear elevation that you put your windy stack up here in red to mirror the front elevation. Any way you can bring that back so it looks like the front one? So it's not on top of your mechanical area? So it has some consistency?
That one and this?
Yeah.
Well, I guess one comment to that is isn't the freezer coming out? If you put it in front of the freezer, then it's not serving as a screen, because it's not gonna be flush up against the building.
It still just looks like the back of a building. Too much. It's better, but can it be better than the way it is now? Can you bring that,
Carry that red down?
Yeah.
yeah, bring it all the way, yeah.
Freezer's there, you can't do that.
And Ms. Mitchell, you're saying because of the freezer sticking out there, it's gonna,
Lower portion red, so from a plane, it looks the same.
Oh, see,
No, I'm saying bring the whole thing out, not make the red brick. Make it like the one that's on the front, bring it back. And start it on the mechanical brick and, have that top half, brace it however you have to brace it.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. White, are you done, Mr. Cook? Mr. White?
I think the, what my colleague is alluding to is that we have a element that the same element occurs on both the front and the back. That we have a top to bottom red panel that represents identifying the facility, and that instead of just having something up above the roof of the storage building, of just building a panel like that off the corner of the storage building so that it looks the same. And the motivation for this goes back to the fact that when this property was first presented as a master plan for the property development, that the buildings built would not have a back end facing either the street or the parking lot, and that there would be an attempt made through the design of the building to make it look as though it was fully rounded in terms of all the elevations. And that this is basically just a mast kind of sign. I know we may get some response here about it, but can that be moved in the rear elevation? It is actually a rear elevation. Can that be moved forward so that it has the same appearance as it does on the other side?
I can certainly take a look at that. I can't answer that right now, but
Well, I understand the roof is not as high, but we're trying to make the front of the building and the back of the building look similar.
I guess the question is if you're looking at the drive-through side elevation,
Yes.
how do you make that happen unless, to Larry's point, do you create a red material in front of,
No. You move the whole thing and just build it up and down. Build it up. Just like it is in the front. If you took that same element, just mirrored
want it
it.
in front of the freezer then?
Yes, in front of the freezer. So you're not looking at the freezer as the front of the building.
so you're keeping the brick in that area, you're just moving it
That's 12 feet, that's 12 feet.
forward.
Supported.
You have an element in the front of the building that's, I don't know, a couple feet wide. It goes from the very top, a 24-foot tube, or I think it says that.
24, yes.
24, and it goes all the way down to the grade. Build that same element in the front, in front of the freezer building,
So you're talking about from the grade up?
24 feet
24
high.
feet.
Make it the same. It's the same element.
Ms. Mitchell, you look perplexed.
Well, I guess the question we're having is it's not gonna have the same look. It may from the one view, But again, when you're looking at it from the side elevation, you're gonna have this wall that's significantly higher than the freezer. Only
well-
to achieve, only,
Well, the problem is that they still have the freezer and all that stuff at the back of the building, and we're trying to not to look at the freezer as the way you approach this elevation. The fact that they have the building organized that way, we're trying to look at
Right.
how can we make it look like the freezer is not the predominant element on that elevation.
And what makes it hard is that the freezer elevation steps down. So I see what you're saying, that, you know, from a drive-through side elevation, it's gonna look like this wall sticking up, which it is.
But when you look at the elevation,
But when
it
you
looks
look
the
at it
same as-
from Giant Eagle
sides.
and you're in, you know, you're inside there and you're looking at the main,
I think they came halfway with what we were talking about. Now, maybe they don't want to do that. Maybe they want to do something different. But right now, it just looks like a sign up above the freezer. And that still looks like the back of the building. And the planning concept for these sites is that the front and the back of the buildings there is no back of the building. You basically front on both the parking lot and on the main street. I believe there was what was it, Taco Bell?
Yeah, they did it on both ways.
And
Taco Bell did it both.
Taco Bell put their element on both sides of the building. Right, from the top to the ground.
I
So-
think one of the differences with Taco Bell, sorry, Jeff.
No, go ahead.
The elevation for Taco Bell was the same elevation all the way across.
Right.
As Brian had mentioned, the drop in elevation is what's causing this issue. If you have the same elevation, you just put the same.
Well, we're not trying to redesign the building for them, but we're trying to get what we asked for in terms of how buildings would sit on the site. And the Taco Bell plan worked better. This is now not working as good because as you approach this from their entry, the first thing you see is the freezers. And that's not a front of the building. Look. I'm not trying to solve the problem. I mean, we're suggesting that if you're going to put a panel sign like that up and you're going to mimic the element in the front of the building, then the element in the other front of the building should be the same element, or as close as possible.
I'd like to hear your thoughts to Mr. Cook and Mr. Vargas' comments.
What I could do is go back to the architects and explain to them what they need to do, and I'm sure they'll address it the best way they can to satisfy the city.
To try to make the other, there is clearly a front of the building. We ask that these buildings be located and designed so that there would be an appearance similarity on both sides as part of the overall planning concept of the development of this property. They came halfway, maybe, in our minds, right? They tried. We're suggesting maybe they could go further.
Okay.
Okay?
Any other questions from the commission? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion with these, including the stipulation that we just talked about.
Mr. Chairman, are you tabling this? Are you, is it?
Well, I want to see what the pleasure of the commission is. We can.
Let me ask a question can we approve the site plan and the engineering and table the architectural approval?
All right.
Yes.
Yes, so let's do that. That's my motion then, is to table the architectural approval, but approve the site plan
And the engineering.
and the engineering.
I have a second.
second.
Madam Clerk?
Mr. Varga.
Yes?
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think you got it.
All right, item number 5, final site plan and architectural review of a commercial building car wash at 6985 Center Street in the B2 General Business District by Jim Brown Incorporated and 6965 Center Street LLC. Gentlemen, welcome.
We'll wait for Rich to finish up. You good? Yeah. Okay, you gonna join us?
He doesn't know how to address this.
Tally CM.
Rich Gantan's reading from Land Design Consultants, Engineer and Surveyor.
Salwan, Paskovich and Associates Architects. One of the quick things, overall, from the last time we were here for the prelim site plan review and approval, the site plan has remained the same for that last meeting, what was approved. One thing quickly I want to touch base on is, I know a concern regarding the stacking. Basically, it's making sure that cars do not get out onto Fracci Court. What we're anticipating, the car wash itself will do between 150 and 180 cars an hour. So for cars to get that far backed up, it's going to take a lot of cars be pumping through before they get backed up. But by chance, if the cars do start getting backed up, there will be 3 attendants on the property at all times. They'll be manning the car wash. So one of the attendants will be able to take and direct traffic. Our thought process is when the cars come off of Fracci, they'll be able to go through the site and start coming around and then kind of coming back around to the lane there to be able to stack more cars on the site itself, if that ever does become an issue. We currently do not foresee the cars ever getting stacked that back far up into site, just based upon the amount of cars that will go through the car wash in an hour's period of time. One other comment too that came up is regarding the landscape plan that we are going to definitely fully address. This is obviously the landscape plan that was originally submitted. We are going to add some additional landscaping in through this area here, per the comments, to be able to screen the cars as they come through around here. I know that's a concern, is kind of help to hide the cars, but keep the landscaping low enough that it does not hide the building though. So we'll make sure that we have that taken care of.
We did make one change to the site plan. We added the do not enter sign at the exit lane of the car wash, as stipulated by the engineering comments.
Is the building?
Just an overview of the building with the plan. So on the first floor, you got the tunnel system with the equipment, the main office, and the point of sales canopy, and then the upper office, which is shown, with that tower element on the front. It's going to be a pre-engineered metal building with polycarbonate roof, arched roof through the whole tunnel to allow all the light and everything to come through. Glass across the whole north facade, and then metal panels on the office tower element. These are the south elevation. Again, glass up until you get into the equipment area. And then the east and west entrance and exits. This is just a close-up rendering showing the colors of the white panels, silver, and then the red for the framework of the tunnel. And this is just a overview of the site, showing the view kind of, looking down 615, and here's the main tunnel with the polycarbonate roof. Then this is the vacuum facility, and then that's primarily where the bank one is taken down. And then the wall along the gallery one is going to be restored and then landscaped accordingly. Yeah, since we're on the rooftop units kick tonight, there is about an 8-foot or more deep parapet for the unit, and it's going to be a small unit since it's only those two little offices, so it's going to be well hidden.
Okay. Anything else? Ms. Mitchell, would you like to add anything to the discussion?
No, I guess since we have the architect here, and I don't know if they designed the landscaping design that was just previously shown. I know one of the conditions that we had made, we were interested in how that wall was going to be treated, and that's something that would need to be approved by the planning commission.
Right, now, that's condition number 3. Are we going to have the opportunity to see how the treatment comes out, and then if we disagree with it, we have some say-so, or we're agreeing that because it's a condition, we're okay, that they'll properly approach treating that wall correctly? I'm just a little confused on that one.
I think we were looking for more specific as to color, and if it's just paint that's going to be done, or if more, and if you were satisfied with the coloring, then they could proceed.
Well, I imagine the coloring is going to match the coloring of the building.
Yeah, we'll blend it into the existing building. We think that there might be brick along that facade.
Yeah, and we did get that last time when we presented for the prelim site plan. I know Larry Blinds had brought the photos. So we did get inside there. So there's existing 4-inch high, 16-inch long split face units. So I know we discussed it as we patched the holes when the old existing building's taken off, and let's repaint that wall white to match what's there today.
Yeah, that was my question. So if there's any tuck pointing or repair work, you obviously got to do that first.
Right.
And then you'll put on the paint
Correct.
that matches the entire building, and it'll look like nothing ever
Yeah.
occurred. And you're committing to do that because we're requiring you to do that. Your traffic pattern, if you look at it on the map, it looks a little confusing, although if you can follow it. I see what you're doing. You're taking cars down Fracci Court to the eastern access, having them come in, loop around, and come into the front of the car wash as it fronts on Center Street. What type of, I heard you mention signage. You're going to have directional signage at various locations, so it makes it easy for the customer to kind of maneuver their way in until they get used to this
That's
car wash.
correct. Yeah, there'll be signs, obviously main sign showing about the car wash out here as you first come around the corner off of 615 on the Fracci Court. And then also too, there's going to be some signs as soon as you pass the kind of now dedicated drive access to Gallery 1 area. As soon as you pass that, there'll be some signs as well, kind of pointing, saying, basically, car wash entrance, so they can know which way to go around. Yeah, first it will take some time once it's up and going for people to realize where they need to go. So first there might be some confusion, but after a while it'll be figured out.
I know we were concerned with Zappy's Car Wash when they started stacking on Menor Avenue. And then when we brought them back, they did a great job in rectifying that problem. And that's stated in our report here, that if you should ever experience, stacking onto the public right-of-way, that's got to stop immediately, especially on Center Street. But if you start stacking on Center Street, that's an awful lot of cars. You've got
Especially 150 to 180 cars an hour that car wash will do itself. So that's in order to get out to that far. That's
Right. But what's our feeling about Fracci Court? Fracci Court's a public right-of-way dedicated, is that correct?
Yes.
Do we want to see stacking on Fracci Court? I know it doesn't cause nearly the kind of problem Center Street will cause, but do we have a concern with some stacking on Fracci Court?
Well, engineering hadn't made any comments to that effect, and I think we can indicate that it doesn't have the high volume, certainly. So it didn't raise that red flag for us.
Okay. Mr. Brown, do you want to make a
I can
comment?
make one comment. Jim Brown with Classic. We have 3 acres across the street. There's a batch plant that was torn down a few years ago. That could be an alternate to easing some of the traffic that may back up as well.
Okay. Commission members, any additional questions? Mr. Cook?
Yeah, I got one thing. My experience with car washes is a lot of people will bring some towels and chamois of their own in their trunk, and when they exit a car wash, they find some space that they can touch it up because, those dryers only do so well. So people are going to come out of here and make a hard right. Is it going to be all right? Because there's going to be cars lined up here that you would be on the south side of your main building. And they're gonna, you know, hand dry their stuff off, and have you thought about that at all? Because that happens at Zappy's too, because they'll come out on the right there, and they have the space to do it.
Yeah, right.
And we have right here, if you especially come out of the car wash, they can come down around, especially if they come over to the vacuum stations, that the area over by the vacuum stations is pretty wide. They could pull along over here, the landscape buffer, and be able to
Right,
get out
'cause
of the
it's-
car.
You know, people do that.
Yes, we do have the room, basically, to do that, and obviously, too, they can also pull into as well, because we have 12 dedicated parking spaces for the vacuum station as well, so they can also pull into one of those too and use them. And those vacuums too, they're free vacuums.
Right. Something you might want to think about, maybe a sign or something, if that becomes an issue. If you're pumping 150 cars an hour through, you're gonna get 8 to 10 cars that are wanting to, you know, finish off their drying and so on and so forth.
That's the nice thing too, especially having 3 people on working on the property at a time, so they can too as well. If people start getting
Right.
areas that they can go as well to help the direct traffic.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Cook, you finished?
Yeah.
Mr. Varka?
This is more of a question. I was just looking at this. You have an island, but when you come out of the facility, you have an island that separates, not an island, but a section of separation between the exiting car and the car that's going into the queuing line.
This right here?
Yes. Had you considered extending that further down so that you could keep the cars coming in and the cars going out kind of separated? Because right now, when you just look at the arrows, like down here on this other island where you have the vacuums, you've got a lane that's kind of not defined coming in. You've got parking, it looks like it's almost 40 feet wide. And I was thinking that maybe it would be better if there was more definition to that inward path, so that you're not mixing with the people coming out of the facility. I know these are just arrows that are showing that certain things are happening, but there's an arrow down there just at the east end of that other vacuum building that's going north, and that directly lines up with the arrow coming out of the facility going south. And I don't know if that's really I don't know if that's really going to happen, but
These two.
I mean, they're literally traffic coming in and going directly into one another. If that island could be extended down to separate the incoming and the outgoing, would that, I would think that would be of a benefit to do that.
We could take a look at that, and as long as we maintain the 24-foot width of two-way traffic, but
Right.
we could,
But the only concern I have about the two-way traffic is that two-way traffic, the northbound two-way traffic is going straight in towards your outflowing
those two right there.
traffic.
Right.
And to me, that just seems a little dangerous. To have people assuming that they can drive north through that opening, right into oncoming traffic of everyone coming out of the out of the car wash. You see what I'm saying?
Well, you're absolutely right. Yeah, we'll make this a one-way.
Or something. I'm not telling you how to solve it,
You're correct.
but it looks like it could get confusing.
I don't know why that arrow's there. That's ridiculous.
Well, you see what I'm saying? The two arrows are pointing at each other.
Well,
And all of your traffic coming out of the car wash is heading
Ridiculous.
south.
I agree with you.
So-
So we're gonna take that arrow out. We're gonna pull
And
this in.
maybe more separation between the incoming lane and the outgoing lane
No question.
might be useful too.
Done.
Okay? That's all.
Excuse me if this is redundant. Are these pay stations, or you have attendants who take the money and direct the cars into the?
So the way it's gonna work is the lane right against the building, there
Yes.
will be an attendant there. But out there, you can basically either pay with cash or pay with credit card. Same with the next one's out. We're looking at taking the outermost lane and having that, what is that system called, Jim? Here.
This.
Yeah, what's that system called that you have that you
I don't know.
They're looking at having a prepaid, basically a monthly, also count. They always have like a little reader on the car, so it'll come through, and then automatically you can just, it goes that way, recognizes your card and lets you go.
Okay.
See that, but yeah, basically, so it's the option of either basically paying or with credit card, or if you have the prepaid thing. Also too, so the person having here right at the booth, if there's also an issue out in one of the other lanes, that person can be able to see there as well, be able to go out there.
That was my question. Somebody's there to troubleshoot.
Correct, correct. So yeah, at all times there'll be somebody manning the station there, which allows you to be able to see the other 2 lanes. There'll be somebody being right here as before the cars go into the car wash, just to make sure that the cars are going through before they go in, that there's nothing hanging off the cars that could damage anything in the car wash, and there'll also be one other person on site as well at all times.
Okay. Any additional questions, members of the commission? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
How should we, let me ask a question. How should we, there was a suggestion made and a response that they would look at adjusting some separation between the incoming and outgoing traffic. Can that just be
Condition.
a condition?
I don't see why not.
And that you could review, the city could review it when they...
All right, why don't you make it
Okay,
a-
well, I'm making that a condition, that there be more definition between the incoming and outgoing lane of traffic.
on the eastern end of the
Yeah,
project?
well, yeah. Incoming, outgoing.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a second,
I'll second.
thank you. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Varga.
Yes?
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes.
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Mr. Brown, don't go away.
No.
All right, our last item on the agenda, miscellaneous review of 3 trailers at 6951 Center Street in the B2 General Business District by Jim Brown Incorporated and 6951 Center Street LLC. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
First thing, this site plan is a little bit different than what was submitted. Since the time we submitted, we have decided to take the same trailer orientation that we had originally showed, which is the double wide trailer for sales, the ADA accessible restroom trailer, and then the single wide trailer for service advisors area. We decided to take that and slide it all back. One is just to kind of help to screen the trailers a bit more from 615. And also, too, as we looked at it, it was going to be a better layout for be able to use of the existing site as it is today. That's because obviously we want to keep the heavy new car inventory is up in this area here. We figured it would be better for then the cars coming in for sales and for to get service right up to be able to come in here and have our ADA parking and instead of having it all up in this front corner. Basically, the main thing is we're having these trailers here during construction of the Mazda building. We did break ground last week on the service addition for Mazda. We are working out through the city to get our permit for the front portion of the building. So once we can get that and then get our trailers permitted and on site, that we can start the demolition construction of the front of the building. So like I said, we're getting the trailers here later this month, and then our all hopes is to have the project done by the end of this year.
Okay. Ms. Mitchell, Larry, any comments, issues, concerns?
With the shift? No. No, and we, I mean, other than the conditions we noted.
Right, okay. And then once this project is completed, you project it around December, you said?
Yes.
Then the car wash project, spring of 2019?
Start that immediately.
Pardon me?
We'll start that immediately.
Start that one immediately? Okay. A lot of work going on that site. And that, also, the bank building's still coming down, correct?
Correct.
All right. Commission members, any questions for Mr. Brown's development team? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion with the 3 conditions.
Second?
Madam Clerk?
Mr. Varga.
Yes?
Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Mr. Cook.
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti.
Yes,
Mr. Tiedemann.
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stay dry. Do we have a director's report, Ms. Mitchell?
No, we don't. I will add, though, that one of the items that was on the last meeting agenda, which was PCC airfoils and the structure that was installed to cover those materials in the back, which are viewable from Route 2. One of the items, well, the condition was to screen that.
That's right.
We did receive a plan, however, our landscape architect looked at it and he's asked them, and he created a letter today asking them to enhance the landscaping even further. Some of the materials that they proposed were, in his mind, too small for the size of the structure. So I didn't want to present or share anything tonight until they provide us with a revised drawing, but that is, I just want to at least give you an update that that is in process. They've communicated with us and we're working with them, so.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hearing no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.